Well, you guys, Lord Chippy is an equal opportunity, well, Lord, if you will. And, we have some big cases and small cases. And I did want to start covering longer articles, maybe a bit deeper dives. And, well, who would come up first in our, Lord Chippy longer true crime edition? But the mighty Mormon Power Ranger herself, the mighty Mormon, if you will. Lori Vallow, the translated being the second coming of Lori Vallow herself and her story. As you guys know, this is a crazy story. Buckle up, put your seatbelt on. Lord Chippy, I hope you're taking digestions and all those things, antacids, because I don't know, but this Lori looks like heartburn in a hatchet face redux from Crybaby the musical. If you haven't seen that musical, it's great and it does have Johnny Depp in it. But let's get into the article. When Lori Vallow was arrested in February 2020, 5 months after anyone had last seen her son JJ Vallow, 7, real name Joshua, and daughter Tylee Ryan, 16, police said she refused to provide a straight answer about either child's whereabouts. Now, 3 years later, she was found guilty of unaliving her children and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Idaho, I wish you had a more, let's just say, concrete shoe sort of solution for this. But Lord Chippy does stand in the gap for the day that I am elected, Empress of the Pettyverse. We will have, additional justice centers all around. Figuratively, probably. Who knows? Who would elect me? After a months-long trial in which the defense did not call any witness, Lori was convicted of first-degree murder in the deaths of both JJ and Tylee, as well as conspiracy to commit murder in the 2019 death of Tammy Daybell, her husband Chad Daybell's wife. Now, she was found guilty of grand theft by deception because she had continued to collect the Social Security benefits on her children's behalf after they were passed on. Generally, if like a spouse, if Charles Vallow had adopted Tylee, then she might have been entitled to Social Security, survivors benefits, things like that. JJ, since they adopted him, would of course be entitled to it. I don't know about Tylee, but Tylee's father did pass on, so she might have been receiving benefits from that. So again, yeah, Lori did a little bit of what we like to call the fraud, in addition to the felony murder. She had a busy, busy day planner that day. Now, Chad, her husband, Peter Blockhead Griffin in person, decided, well, he was also, well, not also, he was sentenced to the ultimate punishment after being found guilty of unaliving JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. So all three of them is what Chad got versus Lori just being involved in the children and then conspiracy. But it is alleged by prosecutors that Chad had a much more hands-on, um, you know, role in unaliving everyone, whereas Lori was more the mental mastermind behind everything. Yes, I understand that makes no sense given Lori, well, just Lori. But in theory, in this hypothetical, like terrible Mormon death cult weirdness thing, this is the character role she's picked. Mental mastermind. Now, on April 22nd, Lori was also convicted of conspiring to kill her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, with her late brother, Alex Cox. So, in that situation, again, they alleged that Charles Vallow came in, attempted to, hit Alex Cox with a bat. Charles Vallow was in the minor leagues, he or college baseball, so he was not a person that if he swung a bat potentially in self-defense, you would end up with a little itty bitty boo-boo, not so much. But that's the story they went with, and that's the story that Arizona bought for a good long while. So there you go. Now, before being sentenced for murder in 2023, Lori told the court that she had been in touch with the spirit world, and she knew that both Tylee and JJ were happy. Quote, Jesus knows me and Jesus understands me, she said, per NBC News. I mourn with all of you who mourn my children and Tammy. Jesus Christ knows the truth of what happened here. Jesus Christ knows no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen, suicides happen, fatal side effects from medication happen. Yes, sweetie, but most don't happen when with 2 people who are cheating on their spouses magically suddenly shuffle off this mortal coil very conveniently-ish. They don't get married 2 weeks later and don't have the children anywhere around them. Yeah, like, things happen in life, I can buy that, Lori, just not all the same things at one time to one person, generally. After I get exonerated, she added, maybe I'll go on Dancing with the Stars and you can come. Yes, this woman is an absolute just off her flippin' flapjack rocker. Now, Lori did not take the stand in her defense during the 2023 trial, but grisly testimony did shed some light into what happened to her children. This is not going to be good testimony if you watch the trial, if you covered this case. This is heartbreaking, just makes you want to, slow down Lord Chippy that much lower. And it is just horrifying for what these 2 beautiful, precious children had to go through in their last minutes of life. So you have been warned, you will want to possibly look at, repealing any of the laws that keep us in the Geneva Convention once this is over with. Now, JJ and Tylee were confirmed dead by authorities in June 2020 after their remains were found buried in the backyard of Chad's home in, Fremont County, Idaho. During the trial, Ada County Coroner Dr. Gareth Warren testified JJ's cause of death was asphyxia from his mouth being covered by both duct tape and a plastic bag over his head, while Tylee's homicide was by unspecified means. And horrifically, sadly, tragically, it is because so much mutilation was done to this young girl's body. Basically, her body did show signs that there was a force multiplier used possibly, but then the remains were also burned and sort of messed with. So, again, Tylee deserved better, JJ deserved better, Tammy deserved better, and Charles deserved better. Meanwhile, Lori's behavior became the subject of rampant speculation. So around this time, we still didn't know where the kids were. It wasn't until Kay Woodcock really, sounded the alarm that she had not heard from JJ or seen Tylee. And she was very worried, post Lori learning that she was no longer the beneficiary of Charles's, insurance inheritance. That beneficiary was no longer there, and then, all communication with JJ, who is, Kay Woodcock's, biological grandson. So, Lori and Charles, got married, possibly thought about having more children, I don't know, but the opportunity to adopt JJ came up. JJ is Kay Woodcock's son's son. And, seems like her son and his partner, who the mom of JJ, had substance abuse issues. Kay is a bit older than, Charles was, and she was just trying to give this little boy, an active, fun life, and still be in his life, as as much as she could be with, the understanding that this is a young boy and he's gonna need, people that are active and things like that, and maybe she just didn't feel like she could do all that. I don't know. I am speculating a bit, but that's generally the vibe I have gotten, from all the interviews and things that I've watched. Again, correct me in the comments. I am in no way offended if I have gotten something totally wrong, and you wanna tell me in the comments that I have. But her behavior was very, very odd, Lori's. Now, the question of how she went from being a somewhat eccentric mother to a convicted killer is probably always going to be a bit of a who the hell knows, and let me check my magic 8 ball and possibly contact Miss Cleo on the other side. I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what motivated Lori to commit such unspeakable crimes. Sky Borgman, director of the 2022 Netflix documentary Sins of Our Mother, told E! News ahead of its premiere. But to formulate any answer, we must look at Lori through the eyes of people who knew her best. That is actually a fairly good documentary. I do appreciate all the work that went into it, so I would recommend it if you would want to learn more. Now, Lori, questioned that approach to telling her story. How do you know if a person if you've never talked to them in 5 years? She said on Dateline in 2025 of those who had purported to speak to her state of mind. How do you know anything about them? How do you know if anything about their life or how it really is? Now, what those who knew Lori seemed to agree is that meeting Chad seemed to change everything. It seemed to be that, that one very clear delineation of Lori before, Lori, loving mom, involved in JJ's life, working, getting him stuff, being like the Uber mom that everyone kind of talks about. That demarcation is Chad. And then after that, Lori becomes a translate. Who the hell knows what happened to Lori? I don't know. Now, I saw him as the hand, excuse me, and her as the puppet on the hand. Melanie Gibb, a former friend of Lori, told NBC News Dateline 2020 after the children's remains had been identified. Now, I will say that Melanie Gibb is somewhat of a controversial figure in this case. Melanie Gibb seemed to be in the same small Chad version of LDS cultness uh, with Lori and Chad, and she seemed very somewhat dependent, very in with all of these crowd of, whatever this thing was that Chad was building. Um, Bullshit is what I was thinking the temple was gonna be made out of if Chad was there. That being said, Melanie Gibb, might be a good person to, again, get an inside look at the cult, but there have also been, criticisms about her, you know, attempting to help Lori or possibly, shading things early on in the children not being around, following things, maybe not telling the truth to police officers. So there are some criticisms of Melanie Gibb out there. Again, she did seem to be somewhat taken in by Chad's version of LDS or whatever the hell Chad was doing. I mean, honest to God, I don't know how anyone listened to this BS and thought, I'm on no amount of gummies. This seems normal. I'm just saying. I would probably listen to it if I were completely. I would have to be Willie Nelson levels of enhanced, I'm not gonna lie. So Melanie Gibb was part of this. They were both like gasoline and fire, not a good match, but equally destructive to one another. So in a way, they were each other's equal match in that they are both destructive to one another. They both had deception in them. Now, Tylee was last seen with JJ on September 8th, 2019, to a trip to Yellowstone National Park with her mom. Um, so Lori and Alex Cox. This is a pretty big picture if you have ever seen, this case, and if she doesn't look like Hatchet Face straight from Crybaby, change my mind. What in the clown makeup are we doing here? Ma'am, miss me. It's a heartbreaking picture because you know that unfortunately, instead of this young girl going on to live a full life to, do whatever or that, her path forward, even if she stumbled, even if she made mistakes, even if she had to, start over again, the entire world was robbed of whatever Tylee and JJ could do. And it is so incredibly sad. So, and that's a picture just seems like it encapsulates that loss so poignantly and so so concretely to me. I don't know, that picture always just stuck out to me because you can see the before and it's so tragic because you know the after. She's going to be buried by a fire pit in Idaho, you know, burned and everything. And it's so incredibly heartbreaking. Now, she was last seen on that Yellowstone National Park trip with Lori and Alex Cox, who had fatally shot Lori's fourth husband, Charles Vallow, that July. Excuse me. Now, Cox died in December 2019 after suffering a pulmonary embolism, which he but before that, he still maintained that Charles Vallow was shot in self-defense. Now, JJ was last seen at his Idaho elementary school on September 23rd, 2019. Lori told the school that she had planned to start homeschooling him because of his autism. And according to the Rexburg police, which had photos from the family's last vacation to help aid in the search, none of this really checks out. Lori didn't become a homeschool teacher. JJ, unfortunately, left in another way, and it's tragic. Now, JJ's grandparents on his dad's side, both Larry and Kay Woodcock, reported the children missing in late November 2019, after which Lori and Chad left town, turning up in Hawaii, of all places. Hawaii, where Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow had run a successful juice bar. Again, Charles Vallow was a good businessman. He converted to LDS Church in order to be with Lori. He seemed to do everything to support whatever Lori wanted to do. It really was the strangest sort of on-off switch, uh, you know, when she met Chad. Now, they were found in Hawaii, Lori and Chad, still maintaining that the kids were all fine. Authorities said that they suspected that the children might be in danger, and we all remember the Nate, Easton sort of, "Oh, you're well, great. Like, people are praying for your children." She's like, "Oh, well, that's nice." And he's like, "Where are your kids?" Because like everyone, he's like, "Ish, talk, you ish." From the very first moment we heard about it, it was pretty clear from the start that something very bad had happened to these children. Dateline's Morrison, who hosted the 2021 podcast Mommy Doomsday about the Vallow case, told E! News. For a little while, I think there was some hope that maybe these children would be found alive. And certainly anyone who cared about them, as their families obviously did, was left to their families desperately hoping that they were okay. But, he continued, there was certainly an understanding as well that the outcome was probably not going to be good. After her niece and nephew's remains were positively identified on June 13th, 2020, Lori's sister, Summer Cox Shiflett, who had previously defended Lori to those who expected the worst, told Facebook, admitting she was wrong. She took to Facebook. She's like, look, mea culpa. Look, my sister is crazy. And I don't go to, like, she doesn't go to school here. We don't know her. Bye, Lori. Bye, Felicia. Just, which good on her. though she was going to continue to see where the investigation went. Tylee and JJ are completely irreplaceable in our family, she wrote. I have loved them greatly all of their lives, and there are no words that can capture this loss. Words are inadequate. We have dozens of Tylee and JJ stories that we love to share frequently. We have prayed our hearts out for them and hoped with all our hearts that they were going to be safe. But sadly, we have to face this new reality that our family will never be the same. Police had previously searched Chad's home in Salem, Idaho in January 2020, carrying out more than 3 dozen items, including both computers, cell phones, medications, paperwork, evidence. And this is the human douche canoe himself, if you could believe it. I mean, again, I have seen pictures of Charles Vallow, bald, not divoty head, athletical, goatee. I mean, he was an attractive man, and then you decide to ditch Charles for the human equivalent of a thumb. What the hell, ma'am? Like, ew. Or remember in the 90s those plastic chicken nuggets that, like, danced on the McDonald's commercial? He looks like one of the living chicken nugget dance guys, I'm just saying. Or Grimace. Actually, Grimace wins, never mind. F you, you're Grimace. Madison County Prosecutor Robin Wood said via Zoom during a June 10th, 2020 court hearing that the manner of concealment of one of the bodies was particularly egregious per NBC News. The criminal complaint alleged that the remains that had been in Chad's yard since sometime between September 22 or 22nd, 2019 and June 9th, 2020. Quote, this whole process is really hard. Kobe Ryan, Lori's son from her second marriage, told East Idaho News in June 2021 after Chad and had Lori, had joined Lori in pleading not guilty to murder. We all had to go through it, but he's going to say what he's going to say, and he's going to lie about it. From the beginning, they have lied, and there's nothing you can do about that. In August 2021, however, oh, for the love of Cheetos and monsters. There we go. Sorry. I'm a professional. Chad's children told 48 Hours that they believed that their father was innocent, didn't hurt anyone, including their mother. His daughter, Emma Murray, alleged that Chad was framed. And then when she asked by who, she replied, I think it's pretty clear by both Lori and Alex. Yet, by all accounts, Lori hadn't uttered a word against Chad since their arrest. The stories we've heard from her jailers are that she's reading Chad's books, she's writing him letters, she's dancing in her cell, Morrison told E! News in 2021. She still seems to be caught up in the belief that she's going to be swept out of all of this and taken up to heaven sometime in the next little while. Lori may have reached a conclusion, uh, or that how Lori might have reached that conclusion, God only knows, because the Lord told her through a speak and spell from 1974. Who the hell knows? Up until a few weeks before he wed Lori, Chad had been married to Tammy Daybell, the mother of his 5 grown children, for almost 30 years. Now, Tammy died in her sleep in her Salem home on October 19th, 2019. Her death initially assumed to be, just natural causes, things like that. Her kids later told CBS News that the family decided against having an autopsy performed. But police opened an investigation calling the 49-year-old's death a bit sus, if you will, like all the sus. At first, local detectives called to the scene didn't notice anything particularly off, Fremont County Sheriff Len Humphreys told East Idaho News in January 2020. But then Arizona authorities got in touch with his office. There's a lot of concern for the safety of these kids, Humphrey said, and the information that's coming out of Arizona in reference to the death of multiple people is concerning. Now, Tammy's body was exhumed December 11th, 2019, and on February 4th, 2021, authorities announced that her autopsy had been completed and the Utah medical examiner's findings had been handed over to the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. The contents of this report will not be made public at this time, as it is evidence in an ongoing and open investigation, Humphreys relayed in a news release around that time. Though the official report is still or was still under wraps, Chad's son, Garth Daybell, told CBS News 48 Hours in 2022 that investigators determined Tammy's cause of death to be asphyxiation, so neck hug or something of the like, cutting off air. Fremont County Prosecutor Lindsay A. Blake confirmed as much during Lori's trial. But his brother, Mark Daybell, added that that didn't necessarily mean that their mother had been smothered. There's more facts that we need, Mark said. We don't say just, oh, well, bye, Chad. No, there's still love and there's still that connection. Which, again, Chad, you utter douche canoe. First your wife and then putting your children, all five of them, through all of this. Just gross, and taking the lives of 2 other children, you know, being just a general evil butthole. What is wrong with you? I mean, I know I'm not shocked. I mean, it's not a hard question to answer. So, though the official report was, still under wraps and everything, so, Mark and the family were a little bit confused, like, "Chad, maybe?" I mean, look, the autopsy says this, but again, I can understand, you know, really struggling with trying to figure out how a person you've known for forever, who've always seen being one's type of person, switch to someone capable of this. Wardrobe change, I am back, but I had to wait for another day, so obviously different Mo. Do wash and change my clothes daily, so now you know. Can't get away with it anymore. I wash and change my clothes daily. So we're gonna continue on, so this is right around the time in the article where the bodies were found, and of course, Chad and Lori's family were kind of in the midst of finding out that, no, the children were not, in fact, okay. They were not with relatives. They were not, staying underground like, allegedly the Skelton brothers, although they have been officially legally pronounced dead, the Skelton brothers. I do have the or the, oh gosh, what is it called? The hearing where they basically went through everything and did pronounce them dead. It was earlier this year. It was heartbreaking, but I think there can be no doubt in the Skelton brothers case that the father did something, and even if we can't ever prove it, definitely that is a closing at least that the mother can, you know, have a memorial for her sons. But let's get back to the Lori Vallow, case. So, again, right around the time that Chad's family found out that the children's bodies were found on his, in his house, in his area. Now, East Idaho News received a statement credited to Tammy's parents, siblings, and extended family in response to the grisly discovery on Chad's property. Quote, "As the family of our beloved Tammy, we want to extend our deepest and heartfelt love and sympathy to the families of both Tylee and JJ. We share the pain of the tremendous loss and that you're enduring. We still suffer and we will suffer with you for many years to come. Please know that we will continue our prayers to strengthen your family and as you are finally able to properly lay to rest your precious JJ and Tylee. As matters move through the judicial process, they continue. We pray that each of our families can be strengthened and trust that justice will be swiftly served. We wish to thank the many members of law enforcement and the FBI who have continued to work tirelessly as the investigations continued and the public who have shown such love and support to our families. We also ask that our privacy continue to be respected at this time as we continue to grieve for Tammy and the Woodcock and Ryan families as they grieve this unfathomable loss. Now, was Charles Vallow murdered? Now, I can tell you that yes, a jury did adjudicate that Lori Vallow did, work in conspiracy to unalive her husband. Now, Tylee's father and Lori's third husband, Joseph Ryan, died April 2018 of a heart attack. Now, Authorities adopted or opted to review the circumstances of his death in 2020 after a recording surfaced reportedly from October 2018 at a religious gathering in which Lori can be heard saying, "I was going to murder him. I'm going to unalive him like the scriptures say." Now, I will say that, Joseph Ryan, he had passed on a l been passed for a long time, when they finally found his body. So there have been, little whispers, little things. Most likely, it was a heart attack. I mean, I am just throwing out there that there has been scuttlebutt about, again, Lori making these threats, him passing away, and Lori, in another little, nugget of crazy, didn't even tell Joseph Ryan's family that he had passed on. Um so again, there may have been cracks of crazy showing long before, Lori met Chad Dorkbell, but I mean, crazy is crazy. I'm not gonna parse it out. I'm not a doctorologist, and I'm not paid the big bucks. Now, per East Idaho News, the context indicated that she was talking about Joseph, and upon further review, the Phoenix police determined that there was nothing criminal involved in Joseph's death. Again, you'll hear different things on the internet. There has long been scuttlebutt that there might have been some issues, but the police have investigated it and said, nah, it just looks really, really sus. Now, Charles filed for divorce from Lori in February 2019, noting in his divorce petition filed in Arizona, where they lived, that he was increasingly concerned about his wife's behavior since she had gotten involved with an extreme offshoot of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter day Saints, whose main focus is preparing for the impending doom of the world. Charles Vallow is probably one of the most heartbreaking figures in this case, besides the children. If anyone was raising the alarm about Lori's just absolutely deteriorating mental state to anyone that he could, he did. There is that tragic, body cam footage where he is trying to tell anyone who would listen that Lori is acting the cray cray. And unfortunately, Lori was able to talk her way out of it. She did the little "He, he's so weird," kind of, female privilege thing. It's just maddening that this man worked so hard, tried to get her help, tried to save himself, tried to get JJ out of there, Tylee out of there, and because Lori has a pretty face and, could turn it on when she needed to, nothing happened. Now, according to court documents obtained by Phoenix's Fox 10, Charles alleged that Lori had threatened to unalive him if he got in her way, and that the end was coming in July 2019. So, the end of the world, the apocalypse, not the end of their marriage. Um, and he wouldn't stop her from being ready. Quote, Mother Lori believes that she's receiving spiritual revelations and visions to help her gather and prepare those chosen to live in New Jerusalem after the Great War, as prophesied in the book of Revelation, the petition read. Also noted in the filing, Charles said that Lori had transferred 2,000 Enterprise Rent-A-Car points from his account and moved a total of $35,000 among their various bank accounts. So, that should kind of be fraud, but, maybe if you're married, it's not fraud. We'll have to remember that for Sailor Moon, shopping expenditures. Just kidding, Mr. Mo. I listen to the budget, you make it, and I creatively finance. Just kidding. So, with all of these sort of signs of her increasing instability, that left, Charles worried that she was planning to leave the state with JJ, and he was seeking sole custody of JJ. Now, the divorce petition was dismissed that March. However, Charles's son from another relationship told Fox 10 that his father really wanted to try to save his marriage. However, the son, he didn't want his name made public, helped his father move from Arizona to Texas with JJ that month as well. Lori had basically just disappeared, the son said, and he had no idea where she went for, I think, 2-ish months. So eventually he was like, all right, I have to move away for JJ's sake and JJ's safety. So he decided to move to Houston. Now, Charles eventually took JJ back to Arizona where Lori and Tylee were living. Now, during this time where she disappeared, it does turn out, or at least some stories do relate, that she was actually in Hawaii just having fun with Tylee. Again, some of this story is convoluted and confusing because Lori Vallow is convoluted and counterfusing. Now, you know, it was at their home in Chandler, so Lori and Tylee's, home in Chandler, where the 63-year-old was fatally shot by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, on July 11th, 2019. Local headlines reported that the, shooting had happened during a domestic incident or family argument. Quote, "I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense," Alex told the dispatcher. Now, there are plenty of, videos with the body cam, and for 2 people who have been through the shock and horror of having to unalive someone, Lori was intensely giggly, and Alex just seemed like it's a Tuesday. It is really disconcerting to watch them be so flippant, so glib, and so just like, "It's a Tuesday." In the body cams right after this, self-defense fatal, incident. Now, according to Alex, Charles and Lori had begun having an argument when he went to intervene, worried that Charles would lay hands on Lori. Tylee then came into the room with a baseball bat, ostensibly to defend her mother, but Charles took the bat and allegedly hit Alex in the head with it. Now, as I've already explained to you, Charles was in either minor leagues or college baseball. Now, I'm guessing if you get to be really, you go to college or minor leagues to, you know, swing the old Bataroonie, you're gonna have some power behind it, even if you are 63. I think body muscle memory would make you at least do a double or a homer. I mean, I don't know. That being said, there was an ittle bitter boo boo. None of this made sense. But that is the story that they went through or went with. Now, Alex told Chandler police that he went to his room and got his force multiplier, and Charles was shot twice in the chest. Now, Alex first told police that Lori had left with the children before he shot Charles, which makes it kind of confusing because Alex was supposed to have gone out there to white knight for his sister, like, I am going to protect her. And, then all of a sudden, she then takes this time to run out of the house, but not call 911 so it doesn't escalate any further. She doesn't say, "Hey, Charles, I'm gonna call, the popo. You better, haul ass out of here." Again, none of this makes sense. If you were scared, I would think, logically call the police, but this is the not Lori Vallow. Now, they were all waiting, so basically police came to the scene and they found Lori and, Lori and them all waiting in Charles' rental car, and then they actually drove away. I think she took JJ to school and got some Burger King or something, just like some random ridiculousness that one wouldn't do if their, soon to be ex-husband or, estranged husband happened to just, die right in their living room. Now, Lori was first linked to Chad when they appeared on an episode of Preparing a People podcast network's Time to Warrior Up. Now, I do believe that preparing a people is still a thing, but this particular Time to Warrior Up and all of the podcasts that contain Lori Vallow in them, I do believe have been taken off the internet. I am not an internetologist, though, so you might be able to find them if you're better at looking at them than me. So they met towards the end of 2018. Now, episodes featuring Chad and the 2 of them together were later removed, and Preparing a People distanced itself from both Chad and Lori. See, if I had just read on in the article. Now, Chad married Tammy Daybell in 1990 in Utah and is the author of numerous faith-themed books, including Standing in Holy Places series with titles like The Great Gathering and The Renewed Earth. So these are kind of like Left Behind books if you are in the more evangelical Christian sort of community. The Left Behind books were part of, if you are left behind after the faithful went up in the rapture, kind of the trials and tribulations you would experience as foretold in the book of Revelation. So these seem to be the Mormon or LDS equivalent of that because I do know there are some very divergent beliefs as far as where, when, and whom will be affected by, the Armageddon, if you will uh, between the LDS Church and mainstream Christianity, even all the different sects that we have. I do know that there are big differences, and I've tried to read up on LDS, and I'm going to be very honest with you. Perhaps it's because I don't have a history in it, or I'm not maybe getting the best sources. I don't know, but it is a whole lot confusing, or maybe because they have characters I've never heard of and books I've never read. So it requires some base reading that I just need to do. But anyways, I did not deeply dig into Chad Dorkbell's books because who the hell honestly wants to do that? I read his Loinfire, Smexy chats and ew, just ew. The man talks about leggings a lot. If you want hot legging on legging action, then that is where you go for that. I don't personally recommend, but who am I to tell you what to RSVP for? Now, at the end of August in 2019, Lori moved in with JJ and Tylee to Rexburg, Idaho. Her niece, Melanie Boudreau, who had been living in Arizona, had an interview that she moved, said in an interview that she also moved to Idaho that November. Now, before leaving Arizona, Melanie filed for divorce from her husband, Brandon Boudreau, who later stated in a custody, related court documents that his ex-wife was caught up in some sort of religious sect and the same one that her aunt Lori had started following. Now, a self-identified friend of Tylee's from Arizona who also did not want her name reported told the Boise Post-Register in 2020, January, she had tried to text Tylee, um, in October 19th, 2019, that she missed her, and she received a reply from Tylee's number on October 25th reading, "Hi, miss you guys, love ya." Now, the friend who showed the paper a screenshot via, Facebook Messenger recalled thinking that the wording didn't sound like Tylee. Now, I will totally out myself as a Genlennial and tell you that I use the triple dot ellipses or whatever you call them, I use a lot of those in texting. So, can confirm that most teenagers do not do that, and this does kind of look like, something that maybe someone more my age range would do, although my age range is unspecified at this moment for vanity reasons. Now, when she lived here, she would respond immediately, the friend said, and when she moved to Rexburg, it slowly decreased, when she would respond to her, how long it would take to get back. The friend said that Tylee had confessed that she didn't want to move to Idaho and had originally planned to stay at her family's house, but that ultimately Tylee had decided to go because she was protective of JJ. He was her little brother. And it's so heartbreaking that Tylee, wanting to put JJ first, wanting to be a good big sister, chose to go to a place that was unsafe. Not that she knew it. I mean, because who would expect your mother and your uncle and your mother's new dork to be homicidal? The friend also told the Post Register that Tylee had already earned her GED, which is why she didn't attend school in Idaho. Meanwhile, Lori had rented out a storage unit in Rexburg on October 1st, 2019, and visited it 9 times and once the following month, according to East Idaho News, which reviewed surveillance footage. Again, this was one of where kind of Chad and Lori's, fidelity and, not cheating kind of, you know, story started to crumble because there is video evidence of Chad giving Lori a little butt tap as they're moving some of the children's things into this and out of this storage, facility when they were supposed to not really like, "I don't know him. Who is Chad? Oh my goodness, is there a Chad here?" I mean, basically, that's what kinda Lori tried to pull. So as all of this is going on October 9th, so right around this time, Tammy Daybell called 911 to report that a masked man had shot a paintball gun at her, and she really didn't have any idea. Now, again, according to Tammy, this was probably just teenage kids, taking a airsoft gun or, something out, just trying to be, general butt monkeys. Now, so basically, that's kind of what the cops told her, probably, a joke, a prank, something gone wrong, jackbutt little kids. What most internet people and what the prosecutors do allege or did allege in that particular case is that that might have been a trial run, because as we'll get a little further in, there is going to be a part with, Melanie, Boudreau and her husband, ex-husband, and possibly being shot at from a Jeep by Alex Cox. Now that trial is scheduled to, go on here in Arizona in just a little bit, with Lori after she failed to defend herself pro se against, the charges with Charles. I don't know if she will, decide to roll a 20 and let lawyers actually cover her, or if she wants to be, full on Lori Vallow Esquire, third party intervener. So we will have to see. Now, Tammy died on October 19th, and her funeral was held on October 22nd. Now, pay attention to October, and then Chad and Lori got married in a private little Hawaiian ceremony on November 5th, 2019. Now, according to authorities' timelines of events, police showed up at the couple's address on November 26th to conduct a welfare check on JJ at the behest of his grandparents, who had not heard from him for months. Now, Chad and Lori said that he was staying with friends in Arizona. Now, the friend they said that, JJ was staying with was Melanie Gibb, and Melanie and Chad both called Melanie Gibb or Lori and Chad both called Melanie Gibb to try to encourage her to tell the police that, "JJ's with me." I'm up and to the point of taking pictures, at a playground of some blonde-looking kid, and saying, "Oh, that's JJ, like, if you can get him from behind." Now, I am sure Melanie probably this was that, "Oh, shit, I'm part of a cult, ain't I?" kinda moment when, she's like, "Hey, I'll do a lot of things for this, non-cult religion, but lying to the cops, I'm not gonna do that." So, that's kind of where Melanie Gibb is in this timeline. Now, Lori and Chad are busy right now because while they're trying to, deliberately and very consistently throw Melanie Gibb and everyone else under the bus, they are leaving their townhome in Rexburg. Authorities later discovered that the two had flown to Hawaii on December 1st. It does seem like Hawaii seems to be Lori's happy place, but considering she's a translated being, I guess every place is a happy place for her. And when looking at the records, the authorities did note that it was only 2 plane tickets to Hawaii, so, the children were still unaccounted for. Now, on December 12th, 2019, Lori's brother Alex passed away in Gilbert, Arizona at the age of 51. Autopsy results, released in May 2020 showed that he suffered from blood clots in his lungs brought on by other health problems. Now, it was really sus there for a little bit. It was definitely there was speculation, and a lot of it, that, Chad and Lori had used Alex as their muscle, as their dirty, wet work kinda guy, and, once they had gotten what they wanted, which was basically to be together, and, Chad was going to have access to Tammy Daybell's life insurance, they didn't really need Alex, but it did turn out to be natural causes. So, while all that speculation was going on, it does look like he did die of blood clots. Now, his family, including his widow, mother, sister, and Melanie, said in a statement to East Idaho News, quote, rampant rumors of evil plots and conspiracy robbed the family of their time to grieve the loss of their husband, son, brother, and uncle. Even so, the family finds comfort in the medical examiner's finding that Alex Cox passed away from natural causes. Now, a little note about his wife. So there does seem to be some matrimonial shenanigans in this little cultlet. It seems that Chad Daybell was very certain that everyone would need to be married to move on with their super secret holy mission. And uh, I think it was Xenia. There was so one woman that Alex Cox married, he hadn't even really known her all that long. And it seemed to be they got married around the same time that Melanie Boudreau and her current husband got together. Again, it does seem like there was some sort of component of matrimony that needed to be occurring in order to get their holy priesthood of crazy. I don't know. But basically, Chad instructed his little cultlet that they all needed to be married. So they were such strangers to the point that when Alex Cox passed away and, uh, his wife's son calls, he's like, I don't even know who this dude is. Like, my mom brought him home. Like, he didn't even go here, but he's on the floor. So again, still a lot of strange and absolutely bizarre things in this case that may have been covered in the trial. I didn't watch the trial religiously. Maybe it was covered there, but this is all some craziness. Now, later that month, with the search for Tylee and Jay ongoing, Melanie's ex, so Melanie is the niece of Lori Vallow, uh, Brandon told Salt Lake City's Fox 13, I spent the last 11 years of my life spending time with Lori and her now deceased husband, Charles. I don't know what happened to those kids, but I know there's people that do, and they're not talking. I love them both. I hope they're safe. They're both just innocent, and they didn't deserve to be involved in any of this. In the first week of January 2020, Kay and Larry Woodcock, JJ's grandparents, traveled from their home in Louisiana to Rexburg and announced a reward of $20,000 for information to learn about the children's whereabouts. Quote, these are beautiful young children. They're two extremely intelligent young children, and we want them back. We want them back in our family, Larry said. We don't say the D word. We don't want to, and we're not going to because we truly believe and we hope and we pray that these kids are alive. And these sick, twisted, evil soul you need to have to keep people hanging on to this heartbreaking, tragic, painful hope that their loved ones, that these children were alive. I mean, I know personally, just as a casual bystander when all of this was unraveling, I hoped and prayed that these kids would be found alive, that maybe it was a crazy cult thing, which would be terrible and tragic, but still these kids would be found alive. Now, in the first week of January 2020, Kay and Larry Woodcock I'm sorry, I've already read that. I am going to get better at these longer ones, I promise. Now, at the time, the Woodcocks didn't know where Chad and Lori even were. Either the couple, had not been they didn't know where the kids were, and they didn't know where the parents were, Chad and Lori, because they hadn't been located yet. "I'm terrified for JJ," Charles's son told Fox 10. "I'm terrified for Tylee. I'm terrified for everyone surrounding them and their safety. I am terrified for my family's safety." Now, on January 10th, 2020, Chad's brother, Matt Daybell, who said he had last seen Chad at Tammy's funeral, issued a public statement urging his big brother to cooperate in the search for the children. I've not been close to Chad since childhood, read part of the statement. My immediate family has had little association with Chad the last many years due to our concerns with his religious claims and particular books that he had chosen to publish, including his own. And again, while, the LDS faith might be a little bit of a stretch for a lot of us, this is still like 15 steps beyond that. Again, trying to learn some about the LDS faith, just for this case and to be a little bit smarter about it. There are a lot of very different things from mainstream Christianity. But even this was like, if okay, so if regular Christianity is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and LDS is a fluffernutter, this is like ketchup and coquillon, okay? Chad's sandwich is all of the crazy. It's like cigarette ashes and Spam, okay? No one has any gosh darn clue what is going on with Chad's stuff. We are deeply saddened at the recent events that have played out in the last several months, and we hope and pray that JJ and Tylee are safe. We want for the truth to be found, whatever the truth turns out to be. The note continued, neither I nor my wife or children have any more information than what has already been reported by the news media. I plead again for Chad to come forward and cooperate with the investigation so that this very difficult situation can be, resolved. Now, on January 25th, 2020, Kauai police served Lori with a notice that ordered her to produce her children for the police in Rexburg or the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare within 5 days. Now, that notice does remain sealed because it does concern, the welfare of minors, and we do try to protect, young ones' identities in legal proceedings. Well, as a shock to no one, because this is, a kind of wrap up of this entire case, that deadline passed. Now, reporters showed up in Hawaii to find Lori and Chad and swarmed into Idaho as the case turned into a national media sensation. After she failed to comply with the order, she was arrested on February 20th, 2020, and after 6 days in a jail in Hawaii, she was sent back to Idaho. Now, she has been locked up ever since for the safety of everyone else. In June 2021, she was declared unfit for trial and ordered into treatment at a mental health care facility, delaying the proceedings for months, because you do have to be raised to a level of competency so you can both be an active participant and assist your legal counsel. It's a thing. Now, at her arraignment in April 2022, Lori refused to enter her own plea, prompting the judge to enter it on her behalf. Those are always going to be not guilty pleas. You are assumed innocent in, America most of the time. Sometimes. I mean, them eyebrows, I'm going guilty, but I never claimed to be, judicial or nothing. Now, in April 2020, the East Idaho News obtained a letter sent from the Idaho Attorney General's office to Fremont County prosecutors that confirmed that Lori and Chad were under investigation for conspiracy, attempted murder, and the murder of Tammy Daybell. Now, Lori's son, Kobe Ryan, told Dateline Morrison that, you know, it hurt so much not knowing where JJ and Tylee were. Now, this episode aired May 1st, 2022 or 2020. And on top of that, we have millions of questions. So you can't call your own mom. You can't go to your house or to her house to see your siblings, and you're just out in the cold. Like, how do you not produce the children? That's the whole reason you're in jail right now in the first place. Also, before Tylee and JJ were confirmed to no longer be here on this earth, Melanie had told Phoenix's CBS 5 that she absolutely felt she would see them again. "Ma'am, I think you might be in a slightly hotter area, but don't let I mean, I'm not St. Paul." "I know Lori would never do anything to hurt her kids," she said, "and I don't have any answers as to why she's done things the way she does, and why she hasn't spoken to where they are, but I can't judge her because I don't know what she's going through. I can only love and support her and hope for everyone to be safe." Yeah, Melanie, that aged like, rotten eggs. Now, Melanie, who said Lori was like a second mother to her as well as an aunt and friend, said she saw a lot of judgment and lies in the way her aunt was being portrayed in the public eye. Lies are the truth, and you're in denial. I mean, six of one, half a dozen of the other. Melanie, I'm going with you're in denial. "I don't know where my cousins are, or her children, JJ and Tylee, but I love them, and I know she's doing whatever she can to keep her kids safe." No, no, that is the opposite. That is you rolled a 1. That is a 1. Nice job. She said that Brandon took her kids from her and denied abandoning or otherwise choosing to be apart from them. Now, Brandon was granted emergency custody of both he and Melanie's children because the mother was being investigated for numerous felonious acts across numerous jurisdictions. Finally, the family court actually, says a mother is bad. But Melanie's new husband wasn't so sure that Lori's kids were safe. It was a shock finding out Chad and Lori were gone and that Lori's children were missing. People's doors were being kicked down because they couldn't find the kids. Ian Pulowski also said in that interview. So you had Ian over here like, what the hell did I marry into? Like, he kept looking like, holy shit, I signed on the dotted line. I did not even look at the ride and I bought a ticket. This is going ugly. And then Melody's like, "My my aunt is beautiful, and she knows Jesus." So, if you ever wanna see a couple of people that are 2 in such completely different spots in where they see, a situation and are claiming to be a united couple, it's kind of humorous if it wasn't so heartbreaking. Now, Ian said he got a call from his own mother who told him that Melanie's ex had alleged that Melanie and Lori were in a Doomsday cult and that Chad was the cult leader and they plotted to unalive Brandon and succeeded in killing Charles. So Ian agreed to go talk to the police and FBI agents were there as well. I was open to sharing everything that I knew at that point, he said. And he added, it seems the information I shared with them just turned this into a nationwide frenzy. Part of that is because if you do watch that interview, he basically wrote down all the belief systems that, Chad and Lori and Melanie had. Again, they did try to bring, Ian into this little cultlet, um, and he was kind of okay with it at first, like, "Okay, my wife's a little kooky, I mean, who knows? It'll be okay." And basically, the outline that he gave of Charles and Lori and Melanie's sort of ideas and thoughts basically turned this into overdrive. So that is the article. I do like doing these longer ones. I didn't expect this to be an hour, but this is a case I know about, so I did fill in some extra info, just for you guys. I hope you appreciate these. I am going to try to do longer videos like this. Please, let me know what you like, didn't like, all that in the comments, because 'cause I'm just talking to me here, so I need to know some feedback. Thank you all for sharing your time with me. I am gonna try to do more of these long ones so you can have something in the background for non-trial days, but as always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, but carry a sassy mouth and a can of bitch fire because kindness doesn't equal doormat, whether you're a translated being or not. On that note, though, Lori, Jesus would like to be RSVP'd no to your current, play date. Bye.